Welcome to the April Michigan Co-op webinar. Today we have Jack Crumm, the Senior Manager of School Partnerships with Carnegie Learning, and he's going to be talking to us about math programs or math strategies that you can use virtually or in person. And so he has some interactive things to share with us, and so I want to give him as much time as possible. Jack, if you'd like to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then go ahead and then start sharing, that'd be great.
Sure, thanks. So like she said, I'm Jack Crumm. I work for Carnegie Learning. I am a manager of senior school partnerships. I'm a manager of school partnerships, and basically what I do is help teachers help their students achieve in mathematics. So Lisa had asked us if we could put together a webinar, and it's about virtual collaboration and engagement, but it also deals with a lot of different mathematical challenges. So we're going to do some math today. I hope you're up for that. Don't worry, I'm not going to put you too much on the spot, but we're going to start. We're going to start today by joining a Nearpod session. So in the chat, I just put a link to a Nearpod. If you're not familiar with Nearpod and Pear Deck are very similar things. It's a way that you can engage with your students virtually, and they have different, you can pay for them or you can do free versions, but it just depends on how advanced you want to get with it. So as you join that Nearpod, I should be able to see, if you click the link, let me share my screen. I want to share this one. Okay, so you should be able to see a number there that will help you get in if the link doesn't get you directly there. Jennifer, how you doing? Did you get in?
I lost my Zoom window when I clicked on it. So can you read it to me and then I'll try to find you again? What's the name? Okay, so in order to find your Zoom window, just click down at the bottom in the in the bottom of your screen, there's a camera that's blue. Yeah. And then you can split your screen. Do you know how to split your screen? Yeah. Okay. Eve, did you get there? Matt?
I am there.
Okay, awesome.
So Jack, it just says engagement and collaboration in virtual world. Okay.
Yep, that's the very first screen. So if everybody's there, I'm going to go ahead and click off the X there, and it's going to look like this. Now, typically when I do a Nearpod with students, I don't share my screen because it confuses them. But if you guys had difficulty finding that screen, then I'm going to go ahead and continue to share my screen so that just in case you get kicked off or something else, you'll be able to follow along with the presentation. Okay. All right. So let's get going. So the average person will check their cell phone about how many times per day? If you don't mind, throw in the chat, how many times do you think the average person will check their cell phone each day? Okay, I see 50, 25, 200. All right, Matt, you have a thought there?
Where am I clicking this in? I guess I'm trying to figure out where I'm, like I have it up.
Okay, so do you see your Zoom? Do you see the Zoom screen?
Yeah.
Okay, do you have an option to click on the chat? Down at the bottom, you might have to.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, sorry.
There you go. Perfect.
Average person will check their cell phone. I hope I'm not average.
Why do you say that? How many times do you check your phone?
I have a feeling the number's high, and I probably check mine way too much in a day, but
okay, well here I'm just going to advance you to the next slide. I'll let you guys see. The average person checks their cell phone about 214 times every day, which is much higher than most of you put, except for Michael. Evidently,
And that's
Michael,
only because I've seen that question before. So I didn't want to go 214 because then it would have been really bad. So
you should have put the exact answer. Then
Oh,
people
no.
would have been like, whoa, how do you do that? But yeah, 214 times. And I wonder if that's different now that we're in a pandemic. Do you think people check their phones more often? Probably, because that's how you're keeping in touch with people, right? Okay, I'm going to advance to the next slide. So basically what I did there, that's at the very beginning of a lesson. It's good to give students something that they can think about, something that they can talk about, something that they can engage in, and everybody can have some success with. So basically what we did was just start off with a getting to know you kind of get together kind of question or an activity that the students can do, and you know that they're going to be able to be successful. Some activities that lend themselves to this very easily are like open middle activities or which one doesn't belong activities. And if you want to know more about those later toward the end of the session, ask me and I can clue you into those websites so that you can use them with your classroom. This is a collaborative board. And what I'd like for you to do is just post what engagement and collaboration look like in a virtual classroom, or what you believe it looks like in a virtual classroom. So you just type where it says share thoughts or images and then click the word post, and it will post here, and I'll be able to see what you post and you can see what everybody else posts. Okay, thank you, Lisa. I agree with her, so I'm gonna give her a little heart on that one. Okay, thanks, Jennifer. Somebody already gave you a heart. I'm gonna give you one too.
Jack, can you say that again? I had to step away real quick there. Can you say again what this is again?
Okay, so this is a collaboration board, and where it says share your thoughts or images, you can type something there and then hit post. And basically what I want you to do is type your idea of engagement and collaboration in a virtual classroom.
It's not letting me type there.
When
You have to do it from the internet side instead of the Zoom part.
Right. So if you're looking at my screen, it won't let you type. You have to look at your Nearpod screen.
Good point.
That's why I don't share my Nearpod. And if you guys are all okay with it, I can stop sharing so you can just see yours, and that'll open up this. Well, no, never mind. She's recording, so I want to keep it sharing.
Thank you.
Yep. Now you've been able to type, Eve?
No, because I closed it because I had to download it.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Matt and Eve, I'm going to go ahead and pursue on, okay? So
Yep.
We're going to move past this slide, but when you think about virtual collaboration, it's the same kind of things that you do in your classroom. You really want to try to mirror everything that you would do in your classroom and find a tool that will help you do it virtually. So I like Nearpod because I can see what students are working on. I can share their ideas with other students, and we're going to work on a couple of those things. Again, Nearpod and Pear Deck are two very similar ways of doing this, and there's much other ways too. Like you can use whiteboard.fi. Have you ever used that?
Mm-mm.
No. So that's a really neat tool. It gives you a whiteboard, and you can put things on that whiteboard. You can hide them in the background, or so your students can write over top of it, and you can see everything that your students are doing. You can even share their screen with all the other students if you want to. So whiteboard.fi, fi.fi. All right. Those are just some ways to get that engagement. Now, what I'd like for you to do is think about what personalized learning looks like. And think about that for virtually. How do we get to personalized learning with our students? But think about what it is and try to post what you think of personalized learning. Thanks, Michael. Excellent. Very good. Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, so what I'm seeing here is you guys have some, and I'm going to show you in just a second, the 4 attributes of personalized learning. And it looks like you guys have covered most of those 4 attributes. When we're talking about voice, you said engagement or make it their own. So co-creation, self-discovery, social construction. I believe you guys hit on most of those things. But what we have to think about when we're doing virtual learning even more than in the classroom is when we're trying to personalize learning for students virtually, it's a difficult task, but we have to allow them their own voice in the construction of those lessons, or otherwise they're not going to be engaged in those lessons as well. So it's a good thing to think about is when we're designing our lessons, think about how we can personalize those for each student to make them effective. But what are some of the barriers that hinder teachers from teaching this way? So you guys, if you're muted, unmute yourselves and just tell me some of the things that you think, or if you would rather, you can type them in the chat. Just some of the things that you think hinders teachers from teaching in a personalized, collaborative, engaging way.
Time.
What's that, Matt?
Time, just because I know in like our world, like we don't have, like that's not their full-time job typically, working with the virtual, you know, virtual students. It's an addition to traditional classroom settings a lot of times.
For sure. So you have less time. Michael said not having the resources or the tools. True.
I think not used to teaching in that manner either. You know what I mean? I think so many classroom teachers are used to the lecture type format that when they go from a classroom into a virtual environment, that they still take on that same way of teaching.
I see. Okay.
For me, I do a lot of online tutoring, and to not be able to see where the student's writing. So like when I'm in person, naturally I know when to pause and then and I may have to wait for 30 seconds for them to catch up to where I'm at, where they won't stop me because students never do. And I'll be like, did you get all that? And they're like, no. And I'm, you know, and luckily I have a whiteboard where I can scroll it back down. But for me, that's a real challenge, is not being able to see, and even just the look on their face as they're getting it or not getting it.
Right. Because you might not be able to see all of their work, right? And what's going on with them.
So
right.
I can't see their face and their work at the same time, and nor can they do that with me. A lot of it's just a whiteboard, and to not have that visual definitely presents a challenge.
Yeah, you're exactly right. All of those things are definitely things that hinder a teacher from teaching in that manner. There's another thing that I was thinking of. And one thing I think that really keeps a teacher from really just being able to go all over everywhere they want to go with every individual student is sometimes there's a lax in content knowledge, right? So sometimes, you know, and if we think about that, we're like, wait a minute, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm teaching. I know, you know, I have a math degree or whatever. But when we think about these things, I want you to think about how we learn mathematics, right? And then as we go through this session today, I want you guys to think about really and truly, do we know everything that we need to know to be effective with every single student? Okay. So we're going to look at a little bit of research from Lippingmall. And so some of their research dealt with teachers solving problems. So what I'd like for you guys to do, I'm going to give you a draw it on the next slide. And what I'd like for you to do is write a good story problem for this problem. So 24 divided by 6. So when I move you to the next slide, it's going to give you a draw it. And you're going to have 1 minute to write your story problem. Okay, let me be clear. I don't want you to solve the problem. I just want you to write a story problem.
Good, because I don't know that I can solve it by myself.
Okay, so Nearpod's pretty cool because I can see what you're doing as you're doing it, which is kind of neat. And then as you get finished, I can share different ideas. So what I like to do is look around and see what each person did. And then I like to pick somebody to share for a certain reason. And now your time's up, so you're gonna be locked out of your problem, right? Because I only gave you a minute and we only have an hour for this session, so I can't give you a ton of time. But let me share Jennifer's. So Jennifer, would you mind reading your story problem for us?
If you have 24 crackers and 6 students, how many crackers does each student get?
Okay, so think about what she did there with that story problem. She has 24 students, or 24 crackers and 6 students, and she wants to know how many crackers does each student get, right? Okay, so she's kind of thinking about making equal groups of 6, right? Out of those 24. Okay, let me, oops, I'm gonna unshare. Sorry, close that. Okay. Now I want you to think about writing a story problem for this question. So 1 3/4 divided by 1/2. Think about that for about 30 seconds. And then I'm going to open up the next slide, and I'm going to give you a little bit more time to create your story problem because you guys didn't quite have enough time the last time. So I want you to think about a story problem that would represent this situation. And now I'm going to open up the draw it slide. And you have 2 minutes this time to write your story problem. Once you get finished, there's a submit button at the bottom. If you hit that submit button, it makes it available for everybody to be able to see.
How do you type at the bottom?
What's that?
What do you click to just type in?
You just to type is you just click in the screen itself, and then you should just be able to write. Oh, there's a letter like a T that you click on so you can type and not have to write.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
Sorry. You have about 30 seconds. Okay, so
I'm really
time's
testing my math skills here.
Well, that's okay. I'm not.
Through all the looks of the story problem.
I'm not totally interested in the mathematics, because what we're going for here, you're going to be able to see pretty quickly. So let me share. I'm going to share Steve. Steve, would you mind reading that I just shared, your story problem?
Yeah, so since I struggled, I had to rush there at the end. So I said you have $1.75 and need to split this money between you and a friend. And I would probably finish that with how would you go about this, or something like that.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Here we have Matt. Can you read what you shared, or your story problem? I'm sharing it for you.
Yeah, a chef has to add 1 3/4 cup of milk to each batch of cookies. She needs to make 2 batches. How many cups of milk will the chef need for each batch?
Okay. Now I think we had one more person get finished with their question. So Lisa, could you read what you shared?
Mine was similar to Steve's. If you have 1 3/4 cups of pop and you wanted to share it with a friend, how would you divide it in half?
Okay. All right. So think about what we did. I'm going to advance you to the next slide here. So think about what we did with this problem, 24 divided by 6. So in your story problems for 24 divided by 6, what you did was you had 24 total things, and then you thought about how you were going to group them in groups of 6, right? So if you divide 24 by 6, then you're going to have 4 equal groups, correct? All right. Now think about what you did with that other story problem. It's 1 3/4 divided by a half. When you wrote that story problem, did you divide it by a half, or did you divide it by 2? Think about that for a second. So as we move forward, we're looking at the research that Lippenmall did. They surveyed US teachers, and they had them do a problem like this. And what they found was that only 43% of US teachers could solve this problem correctly. Just the math. Now you think about all US teachers that had that, of course they didn't give it to everybody, but they did a broad enough survey that they could figure out that about 43% could compute it correctly. And only 4% could make a model of what they were doing. The interesting thing though, is that with Chinese teachers, 100% were able to get it correct, do the math, but 90% of them could create a model. So now when we think about how we teach mathematics in the United States, when you think about from kindergarten all the way up through, how much modeling do we really do? Because you think about your elementary teachers, right? And I'm not sure if any of you are elementary teachers, and it's okay if you are, because you don't have a huge background in mathematics being an elementary teacher, because you probably only took 1, maybe 2 math classes in college, and one of those was a methods class, right? As you get into middle school, you had a little bit more math classes because you have to be certified. In high school, definitely, you had more math classes, but most of those were about doing procedures. Like our teacher said, this is how you do it. They showed you, and then you went home and practiced that, and then you came back and turned it in and you talked about it. If you couldn't do it, then you practiced it a little bit more, right? So it was about doing the procedures. Well, what we can see is with people having that much trouble with this problem in the United States, however, in China, they didn't have that much trouble with it, because whenever they learned mathematics, they learned by making models and reasoning about the mathematics. So we kind of I think we need to shift how we're teaching children about mathematics, as opposed to giving them the procedures. Maybe we need to let them think about and develop those procedures and figure out things ways that they can model those procedures so that they do learn them and then they can bring them back. We'll come back to this in a minute. So understanding that there is a substantial evidence to suggest that the use of models in fraction tasks is important, because models can help students clarify ideas that are often confused in a purely symbolic way. Sometimes it's useful to do the same activity with 2 quite different models. Okay, so we're going to look some more at that math. We're going to dive into it a little bit deeper, so you can go ahead and just pretend you're a student, put on your learner hat, not a teacher anymore. And these are some virtual manipulatives that you can use. Manipulatives in the classroom, super important. COVID makes it difficult. So even if they're in the classroom, we have to think about how we can use some virtual manipulatives. Now I'm going to give you a, hold on. I'm going to give you a link in the chat in case this doesn't come up. When I scroll do this, it should give you, do you get a little frowny face? Okay. Let me give you a link in the chat to reach this website. Because this is a website with a bunch of different virtual manipulatives. Give me 1 second. Not that. This one. This. Okay, so if you click on that in the chat, it's going to take you away from your Nearpod, and that's okay. It's just going to open up another tab, and then you'll have to close that tab to come back to the Nearpod. But go ahead and click on that. There's a bunch of different virtual manipulatives on that site. You might want to bookmark it, and then you can share it with your teacher friends. Manipulatives like virtual number lines, fraction bars, fraction circles, all those things, super important all the way through middle school, even high school. Students need to be able to see those representations. We have students that come to us with gaps. I mean, Jennifer, you said you taught geometry, right? Some of the kids that you have, I'm sure you can see that some of them are on a fourth grade level whenever they come to you in geometry.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have a ton. I mean, I hand out number lines and multiplication tables because they don't have any skills to add integers or let alone fractions. So for sure.
Yeah. So why do you think that they don't have those skills on how to use those particular tools?
Well, in Michigan, our format is to keep passing students through without having any proficiency till they get to high school. So you have students that get all the way through 8th grade that never had to demonstrate that they could literally add two positive numbers together. So then they get there and now they're being told that they have to now be proficient in things and they have zero skills. Okay. So we have a ton of those at our school because again, we're alternatives, they come to us. But it's, and as I said, that's what I spend a lot of time on is trying to help them fill those gaps so that they can be successful in an Algebra 1 class. Yeah, absolutely. And the reason that they have so many gaps with the students, I'm certain, is that we need to build content knowledge for all of our teachers, because you can't be successful teaching in a different manner than you were taught unless you really do understand the content, right? And that, it's hard to admit and it's hard to say, but many of us do not have the content knowledge that we need to really teach the subject, even if it's an elementary school teacher, middle school teachers, high school teachers. So, all right, so you got a chance to look at that website and just bookmark it. You can play with it so you can see a bunch of different virtual manipulatives. There's tons of them, and some of them work better on different sites. Like I found that Toy Theater has a bunch of different virtual manipulatives, and I really like their area and perimeter model, but I don't like their pattern blocks because their pattern blocks won't let you place another pattern block on top of it. So I like to go to math apps or something like that, math playground apps or whatever, so I can use the pattern blocks. But if you guys could all come back to the Nearpod so you can see, I want to do a couple more math problems just to see if we can help you guys start to build the thought process in modeling these fraction or division by fractions. So can you all see Tanya's bracelets? Okay, so Tanya's making friendship bracelets for all her friends. Each bracelet requires 3/4 foot of yarn. If Tanya has 5 2/5 foot of yarn, how many friendship bracelets can she make? So think about for a second, how could you go about solving this problem? And I don't want the math, right? I know that you could change that into an improper fraction or a fraction that's greater than 1, and then you're going to find the reciprocal and do, multiply. I don't want you to do that, but I want you to make a model. Okay. So I'm just going to give you, I'm going to set a timer for about a minute. You can start trying to model this on a piece of paper. And then if you're still struggling, I'll give you another virtual manipulative, and then we'll work it out on a draw it. So I'll give you a minute.
and you'll hear my timer go off. Okay, so if you're struggling to think about this, or maybe you're working on it just fine, but I really want you to think, I'm gonna move you to the next slide. Because basically what you're trying to think is how many groups of 3/4 are in 5 2/5. Okay, so you could use this number line to help you figure out the solution to that. So the next slide, I'm going to give you a draw it. And that number line is on the draw it. And you can use that if you want. But if you have a different model, please feel free to show me the model that you were creating on your paper.
How do we show the drawing on the that we made on the paper?
Well, do you have room to draw it on the draw it at the top, maybe?
Oh, just draw it on the timeline.
Or yeah, or you could do that. Draw it over it. That'd be fine.
Timeline.
Otherwise, I'd have to send you to a separate draw it, and I can't do that because some people might be using this number line. Oh, that's interesting. I like what you guys are doing.
I'll have to explain mine because I could not, what I have on paper is not exactly what I put up on the screen.
That's okay, Lisa. I'll let you explain it. Matt, I see that you submitted yours, but I'm not sure that you were able to, I mean, maybe you did. Maybe are those dots up there what you did?
Yes.
Okay, okay. I see it now. Thank you. So this is really neat. So what I like to do is be able to ask people to show what they did for different reasons. So I'm going to start with Lisa because I am not sure what she did. And I want her to explain that to all of us. So I'll share Lisa's screen. And
okay, what I did not do it. I mean, it's over the timeline,
okay,
but it's
good.
not the timeline. So what I did is I had drawn on my piece of paper, I had drawn like a block and written 3/4 next to it because one block would be 3/4. And then I did one next to it. So if I had 2 blocks that were 3/4, that's 1 1/2. So I did kind of the grouping thing. So that's 1 1/2. And then I duplicated those 2 blocks next to each other. So 1 1/2 and 1 1/2 is 3. Now I'm at 3.
Okay.
3 3/4, or I'm at 4 3/4, but I'm at 3 inches.
Okay.
And so what I did is I put multiply times 3 because I couldn't like copy and paste my block, my 3/4 and my 2 blocks of 3/4, which equals 1.5. I couldn't duplicate those blocks easily on paper. I mean,
Right.
on the screen.
On this screen. So
Correct.
it would be
Yeah.
wonderful if you would have had some manipulatives that you could have shown, like if I would have sent you to that manipulative site and you'd have been able to show me what you did.
If I used blocks instead or something like that, it would have been easier. Yeah.
Right, for sure. Okay, now I'm gonna go here because I want Matt, I want you to talk to us about what you did.
Well, again, just pretty simple, I guess, just ultimately placing dots along the grid or along the line at the points where the 3/4 are, you know, and then ultimately obviously adding up the dots gives you the number to how many bracelets you would be able to make. So I guess pretty simplistic when it's all said and done.
Yeah,
So
so how many bracelets could you make?
Start below.
Yeah, I see. So it's like a double number line almost. But how many bracelets could you make?
I believe it was 6.
Okay.
Was it 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Sorry, 7.
There you go. Okay, so you can make 7. And does it matter how much leftover string?
No.
No, we don't care about that because that's not part of the problem. All right, now I'm going to show you one more. I'm going to show you Jennifer's. Go ahead, Jennifer, if you'll talk us through what you did.
I just went through and colored in. So it's ideally like if you actually had yarn or what a string or whatever you're making the bracelets out of, and just put it, I didn't even use the top number line. I just wanted to show it. The red dot at the end is to represent how big 5 2/5 is, because since this is in quarters and the other is in fifths, students may or may not understand where 2/5 lies on that. So that was how I did it.
Yeah. Okay. And
that's why you're a mentor teacher, because that's great.
And this is basically what Matt did. Matt just did it with dots and she did it with solid lines, right? And then as you figure this out, and basically, let me show you. So I have some student work here on the next slide, which is exactly what you guys did. We're doing jumps on a ruler, right? So I would make my ruler out of quarters because I have 3/4, and then I just see how many 3/4 I could do, and that's 7, and then I would have this much left over. And I know that 2/5 is somewhere in here because it's bigger than 2/4, but it's less than 3/4. So somewhere in there, but it doesn't, this part really doesn't matter. Okay. You ready for another one? All right, we'll do another question. Oh, sorry. I got one more example of how a student could do this. Now, tell me about this. Does this make sense? Is it accurate?
Yes.
Jennifer says, yes, it's accurate. Steve, what do you think?
The left is right, the right looks accurate to me. Yep, leftover.
Okay. So you think this is an accurate way to describe it as well?
I think the one on the right, it shows to me, it's for sure, it's showing at 7.2.
Yeah, because what they did was they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they broke that 1 up into quarters, right? And then groups of 3/4. And you could see that there are 7 of those plus a little bit extra. Okay. We're gonna move on to the next one. So Matthew has to make chocolate chip cookies for his entire 7th grade class. The recipe calls for 1 3/4 cups of chocolate chips for each batch of cookies. His mom bought one big bulk bag of chocolate chip cookies that contains 6 cups. How many batches can he make? So we're doing a division problem again, right? We're trying to figure out what is it that we're trying to figure out, Eve?
We are trying to figure out how many batches of cookies he's able to make with using a 1 1/3 when he only has 6 cups to work with.
Okay, so we want to figure out how many 1 1/3 cups are in 6.
Right.
Okay. All right, I'm going to open up your draw it, slide, and this time I don't think I have a number line on there. I think I just have it open for you guys to work however you want. And you have 3 minutes. Okay, you have about a minute left. I like what you guys are doing. I see so many different representations here. Eve, I just realized that you're not able to get in here because you haven't got, you got kicked out of the Nearpod, right?
That's right.
So
So
are
I'm
you,
doing it on paper.
okay, perfect. So do you care whenever we get ready to share, if you can hold your paper up to your screen so we can see your representation?
Oh, that's fine with me.
I usually don't like to put people on the spot because I can't see what you did, but if you're comfortable, that would be great.
Sure.
Okay. All right, so your time's up, and I have a lot of different representations, and I'm just going to kind of let you look at them. And as I share, I'll just let whoever created that one talk about it for us. And if you didn't get finished, that's okay. Maybe you didn't have enough time. So let's start with Eve, since she has hers on her paper.
Okay.
Can you move? You had to move it so we can see it a little better. There you go.
Okay.
Perfect.
So I drew the 6 rectangles, divided them by 3. And then I use symbols to indicate 1 1/3. So I have the four X's, that would be one batch, the 4 stars, 4 circles, 4 squares, 2 left over. So it shows that I can make 1, 2, 3, 4 batches of cookies.
Very good. Very good. I love it. I love how you use different symbols there. And I know that you understand why you divided those into 3s, right? You divided it 6 group into 3s. But if I had students, I would definitely make them tell me why they chose to divide each of the 6 into 3s, right? Thank you, Eve.
Right.
Okay, so let's start the sharing process. Okay, so here's one example. And basically, Lisa did just what Eve did, just
I did the same thing. Yep, I was, because it was 1 1/3. And so it, I'm thinking 1/3 of a cup. And so it's easier saying each cup has three, has 3/3 in a cup. And so then I did the boxes. I had six. My 6 cups are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 across, and the thirds. And then I just did the 1 1/3
Excellent.
cup each.
Okay, move on. All right, this is Jennifer's. Jennifer, can you tell us about it?
I can't see it.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to click share. Thanks.
And I obviously made a mistake, and I'm trying to figure out where it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4/3. I don't know what I did wrong. But it's
You
wrong.
started at 1 instead of 0.
0.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did wrong. So thank you. Yeah. So that would be it.
Yeah.
But I just divided up into thirds and then just counted over 4.
Okay. All right. And Matt?
Yeah, mine's basically the same concept as Jen. I just didn't get mine all the way through. Kind of the same idea. I was gonna kind of start at 0. Well, I didn't put a 0 in there, and just draw some kind of a color line or a swoop or something to each 1 1/3, and then 2 2/3, and
Until you got to 4?
till you got to the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so, yep, you would have 4 and until you got to 6, right?
Well, whatever the number was, to the end there. I just didn't have time to finish it all.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. And Steve, where were you
Yeah,
going?
well,
here?
this disaster, because I can't draw. I was going to start out with I was starting to go with 6, the cups first, and I was going to break it down. And I
Into
just
3 sections.
struggle with. Here's a quick question: do you have to use a mouse, or what if somebody has a touch screen computer? It's only
If they have a touch screen, they can draw with their finger. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, this works great on iPads if students have iPads for sure.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. All right. So you guys, that was fantastic. The way that you modeled those. And also what I thought was fantastic was that where Lisa, you made that little bit of a mistake there because you started at 1 instead of at 0, but you were going to come up with the same answer as you went through. And then you had the opportunity when we flashed it up there to say, oh, wait a minute, obviously I did something wrong. And you got the time to figure out what you did wrong. It's really important, aside from modeling, that's one thing I want you to see from this, but also I want you to see that it's very important that students understand that mistakes happen, right? And mistakes are how we learn. If your students in your class knew how to do everything, there's no reason for them to be there. Right? So as we work with the students and we work with our groups of students, whether it's virtual or in the classroom, we really need to understand that mistakes are good because that's how we learn. All right, let's move on to, so this is a couple of different representations of the same thing that you just looked at. This is a lot like what Lisa did. A student did this, and then somebody else, most of you guys did a lot like this one here. All right, I've got one more question for you, and I know we're about to run out of time, and there's a couple things I want to do, and hopefully you guys have a few extra minutes that you can stay a little bit past 2, but if you have to jump, I get it. So here's the last question. Jamila is throwing a party. She has 4 pizzas and decides that everyone at her party should receive a serving size that is 3/5 of a pizza. I think Jamila must be crazy because why would we divide them into 5 pieces? But she's going to. So Jamila says she has 6 2/3 servings, but Devon says she has 6 2/5 servings. So draw a model to show who is correct, and then explain why the other person is incorrect. Okay, so she has 4 pizzas. She's going to give everybody 3/5 of a pizza for 1 serving. And she says that she has 6 2/3 servings, but Devon says she has 6 2/5 servings. All right. I'm going to open up this. I've got the question there at the top of my page, but you're going to draw a model on there to explain that. Since we're in a hurry, I'll try to give you 3 minutes and 11 seconds. See if you can get it.
How many pizzas are there again?
There's 4.
Thank you.
And it was 4 pizzas, correct?
Yes, 4 pizzas. I love what you guys are doing. You still have about a minute and a half left. When we get finished, I'm not going to show what you've drawn. Just have that idea in your head because we don't really have time to debrief this one. But I'm going to do a poll and we're going to see who all's correct. Okay. Is anybody still working? Lisa, Eve, are you still working? No, you got it. Okay. I think everybody is finished. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel the timer. You still have 20 seconds left. I think everybody's finished. So we're going to.
We got better as time went on.
Yeah.
Or faster.
That's right.
Well, yeah, you guys are pros at this now. So I'm going to give you a poll. And on my screen, you can see what I would see, Eve, as far as the poll goes. But on their screens, they're seeing a poll. They want to know who's correct. Either Devon or Jamila. Jamila said 6 2/3, and Devon said 6 2/5. Okay, so it looks like everybody responded except for Steve. Okay, thank you, Steve. All right, now that we have all, go ahead.
I think it's B, Devon.
Okay, thank you, Eve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the results. Oops, sorry, I didn't share the results. I can share the results. Here we go. So you can see that most people put B. Some people put, or one person put A. And now let's think about why that's correct. So, Lisa, why do you say it was B?
Because the pizzas are in fifths, and I guess I did the math in my head too. I mean, from my I did the same thing they did here. I drew 4 pizzas with 5 things, and I did 3 out of 3, and I ended up with 2 left. And since they were in fifths, it was 2/5.
Okay. Right. So which one is correct, Jamila or Devon?
Devon, with that there's 2/5. He said 2/5, right? Or 6.
Devon said there's 6 2/5 servings, and Jamil says 6 2/3 servings.
Yeah, so Devon.
So, okay. So, but think about what the question actually asked for. When we think about that, we have to think that Jamila is correct, because even though there are 6 2/5 of a pizza left over, that's actually 2/3 of a serving.
Yep.
So units are a stickler in math. And praise Steve for going ahead and putting A, even though it was going against the grain of everybody else. So yeah, that's a little bit of a trick question, but the important thing is that you guys are able to model these and get the correct grouping of division by fractions now. Okay. So when we think about this, let's think back to the problem that we wrote for this. And I think most of the problems that we wrote, we're dividing this in half. By 2, right? Dividing it by 2 and not by half. And so think about how modeling really does help your students understand what's happening. Because when we multiply by fractions, we're getting a smaller number. And when we divide by fractions, we're getting a larger number. And I do a lot of in-classroom support with teachers. And I've heard elementary school teachers say, when you multiply, the product will always be larger than the factors. That's not true. So we have to be careful about statements that we make, always and never. Same thing when we divide. The answer is not always going to be smaller. We're just putting them in equal groups. Okay, so when we think about that real quickly, if you could make 2 posts on here, type GOTS at the beginning. I know it's not proper English, but I like to use it. And once as the other one. So you're going to make a post, you're going to write GOTS and then hit post and then hit once and hit post. So what did you get from today's session? And what's something else that you'd like to hear about? And as you're doing that, since I know we're after 2 and I do like to be cognizant of your time, while you're doing that, I'm going to talk to you just a few minutes about what I do. So my job with Carnegie Learning is I help schools manage their implementation. So when they use our textbooks, I go into the schools, make sure that the teachers understand the mathematics, make sure that they understand how to facilitate the lessons with the students, just help them be better at getting the information to their students. I also do a lot of things with teachers that don't use our textbook because we are 6 to 12. So we do things like content academies, which are huge for especially elementary school teachers and middle school teachers. And we have a lot of different content academies that we offer, like early fraction concepts, early number concepts, multiplication and division, decimal sense and operation, algebraic thinking. We do all of these different things. So if you're interested in any of those things, in just a second, I'm going to throw a slide up that has Michael Phelps, who's the account executive for Michigan, and also my number and email address. So if you need anything, or you decide that you think that your district might need some of this additional content for its teachers, and you want to do 5-day academies in the summer as professional learning or something like that, just give us a call, because we do not mind being thought partners to help you with your professional learning needs. Okay. Any questions for me before you have to hop off? Let me put you on that one. That's the email address. In the chat, I'll put my phone number.
No, sorry, I was late because I was in a meeting and I'm going to a meeting, so I gotta exit. So, but thanks, and I'll reach out to Lisa with more questions.
Excellent. Okay, and I got my phone number in the. Getting a call from Maine. I got my phone number in the chat, so you guys can write that down. That is my cell phone number. I give that out to all the teachers that I work with. So if you need anything, don't be afraid to text me. Just let me know who you are, because there's a lot of different people. Any other questions?
And, Carnegie Learning will also be at, Michael will be there. I'm not sure, Jack, if you'll be there, or someone else from the organization, but we'll be at our summer conference in Gaylord.
Yeah, it's possible that I will be there. It just depends, because August is a very busy time for professional learning, as you know. So it depends on whatever I have scheduled, but hopefully I can come, because Michael said it would be great fun.
Good. Well, thanks so much, Jack, for sharing that. Those are definitely good strategies for teachers and mentors. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Jack before we close?
Well, thank you guys for coming, because if you wouldn't have been here, I would have been really bored.
All right.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jack. Very informative.
Excellent.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.